Let me ask you something. You're 3 days into a wilderness trip. It's cold, it's wet, the temperature dropped overnight, and right now the only tool standing between you and a real problem is the knife on your belt. Is it the right knife? More specifically, is it made from the right steel? Because here's what nobody in the gear world wants to admit. The steel your knife is made from matters more than the brand, more than the handle material, and more than the price tag. Get the steel right, and your knife becomes a lifetime tool. Get it wrong, and you've got an expensive piece of metal that either rusts out, chips on a hardwood knot, or dulls after 20 minutes of real work. Today on Kicknex, we're settling the biggest debate in the survival knife world. 1095 carbon versus D2 versus S35VN. 3 steels, 3 very different personalities, 1 honest answer. No sponsorships, no brand deals, no fluff. Let's go. 1095 carbon steel. The workhorse that's been winning in the wild for over 100 years. Before there was D2, before there was S35VN, before powder metallurgy and premium stainless and steels with names that sound like spacecraft, there was 1095. High carbon steel, simple chemistry, zero compromise on the properties that actually matter in the field. The numbers are straightforward. 0.95% carbon, almost no chromium, no complex alloy additions. That simplicity is not a weakness. It is the entire point. The carbon content pushes hardness to 56 to 58 Rockwell, which is the sweet spot where a blade is hard enough to hold a working edge through serious use, but tough enough to absorb impact without fracturing. The absence of complex carbide structures means the steel responds to basic abrasives the way no premium steel can match. In a real survival situation, the knife that sharpens in 4 minutes with basic tools is not just more convenient. It is the difference between a sharp knife and no sharp knife when you need it most. That single property and the metallurgy behind it is why the Ka-Bar USMC has been issued in 1095 since 1942. Why ESE builds their entire numbered survival series in 1095. Why Tops Knives uses it for blades sold to military operators. When 3 companies with that kind of track record all land independently on the same steel, that is not nostalgia. That is field validation across decades. Toughness is where 1095 genuinely separates itself from the other 2 steels on this list. In my batoning test, 45 minutes of sustained hardwood batoning, including knotted sections and frozen grain. The 1095 blade came through with a rolled edge and 0 chipping. The D2 blade showed micro chipping at the edge on the hardest grain strikes. The S35VN blade performed better than D2, but still showed more edge damage than 1095 in the most abusive sections. A rolled edge resharpens in 4 minutes. A chipped edge requires grinding. But for survivalists, bushcrafters, preppers, and anyone who uses a knife for real hard field work and commits to basic maintenance, 1095 is the correct answer. The steel that built this industry does not need defending. It just needs using. The Ka-Bar on a Marine's belt, the ESE4 on a Seer instructor's kit, the Morin of Bushcraft carbon on a Scandinavian hunter's belt. These are not people who chose 1095 because it was cheap. They chose it because in the field, it works better than anything more complicated. D2 steel. The middle ground monster that outperforms its price tag every single time. D2 is the most popular steel in the budget to mid-knife market right now. Walk through Amazon's knife section and half the blades you see are D2. It sounds impressive on a product page. High carbon, high chromium, tool steel. And it sits at a price point where most people buy their first serious knife. But the honest picture of D2 is more nuanced than any product description will tell you. And understanding that nuance is the difference between buying the right knife and being disappointed by the wrong one. The composition is 1.5% carbon and 12% chromium. That chromium content is what creates the confusion. It sits just below the 13% threshold for true stainless steel, which is why D2 is called semi-stainless. The problem is that most of D2's chromium is locked up in carbides. Large, hard chromium carbides that contribute to wear resistance, but do not contribute to corrosion resistance the way free chromium in a true stainless steel does. In practice, D2 rusts. Not as fast as 1095, but faster than most buyers expect from a steel marketed as semi-stainless. In my corrosion test, D2 showed surface spotting at 14 hours of saltwater exposure. 1095 showed it at 8 hours. The gap is real, but it is not the gap that semi-stainless implies. The problem is what you give up to get it. D2's high hardness and large carbide structure make it significantly more prone to chipping under lateral stress than either 1095 or S35VN. In my batoning tests on knotted hardwood, the D2 blade showed micro-chipping in exactly the situations where you most need the knife to hold together hard lateral impacts on grain changes and knots. Micro-chips do not resharpen with a field stone. They require grinding on a coarse abrasive, which is not a realistic field repair. The steel that holds its edge longest in a cardboard box is not necessarily the steel you want when your blade is taking lateral force on frozen wood at 40 degrees. The honest verdict on D2 is specific. It belongs in a folding EDC knife for someone who cuts a lot of light material daily, sharpens infrequently, and is not planning to batten, pry, or use the knife for any task involving hard lateral force. The QSB Penguin, Civivi Elementum, and similar budget folders in D2 are excellent knives for that specific use case. D2 does not belong as the primary steel for a hard-use survival fixed blade. If you're looking at a survival knife in D2, look harder. There are better options in 1095 for $60 less or S35VN for $60 more. And both of them are more appropriate for actual survival tasks. S35VN steel. The premium pick built for people who buy once and never look back. Every steel comparison comes down to trade-offs. You want toughness, sacrifice edge retention. You want edge retention, sacrifice toughness. You want corrosion resistance, sacrifice both. That is the fundamental compromise that defined knife steel selection for most of the last century. S35VN is the steel that finally started closing those gaps, not eliminating them, but narrowing them to the point where most buyers no longer feel the trade-off in real-world use. S35VN was designed in 2009 by Crucible Industries in direct collaboration with knife maker Chris Reeve. The brief was specific: improve on S30V by adding niobium to refine the carbide structure, which would improve toughness without sacrificing the edge retention and corrosion resistance that made S30V the previous premium standard. Niobium carbides are harder and finer than the chromium carbides that dominate D2's microstructure, which means they resist wear effectively without creating the brittleness that large carbides produce under impact. That single addition, niobium, is what separates S35VN from the steels that came before it. The composition is 1.4% carbon, 14% chromium, 3% vanadium, and 2% molybdenum, with a niobium addition that the other two steels on this list do not have. Hardness runs 58 to 61 Rockwell, which is deliberately lower than D2's 60 to 62, because the design goal was toughness alongside hardness, not maximum hardness at the expense of fracture resistance. The 14% chromium is free chromium, not locked in carbides the way D2's chromium is, which means it actually behaves like stainless steel rather than a steel that is marketed as semi-stainless while rusting in the rain. In my corrosion test, S35VN showed zero surface change after 48 hours in high humidity and 12 hours of saltwater exposure. Not impressive, expected. Genuinely stainless means genuinely stainless. For hunters, fishermen, coastal campers, or anyone who puts a wet knife back in a sheath and does not always remember to oil it, that zero maintenance corrosion resistance is not a luxury. It is a real field advantage that changes how you think about carrying a knife. The honest limitation is price. Knives in S35VN start around $150 for quality production examples and commonly run to $300 and beyond. That premium is real, and it needs to be earned by the steel. For most pure survival applications where maintenance is possible and budget matters, the extra money over a quality 1095 knife does not produce a survival outcome difference that justifies 3 times the price. Where it does justify the premium is maintenance free coastal and wet environment use, hunting applications involving blood and acidic body fluids, and buyers who want a single knife that does everything without requiring maintenance discipline. Buy S35VN knowing exactly what you are paying for, not a higher number on a hardness chart. A steel that finally lets you stop choosing between the things you need your knife to do. 3 steels. 3 types of buyers. Here is the final answer. If you work hard in the field, maintain your gear, and want the toughest possible blade at the best price, $10.95. ESE4 Cobb Bar BK2 Morniv Bushcraft Carbon, $60 to $100. Nothing in this comparison beats it for pure field performance per dollar. If you cut a lot of light material daily and want the edge to last between sharpening sessions. D2 in a budget folding EDC. QSB Penguin Civivi Elementum. Not for a survival fixed blade. Not for batoning. Light daily carry only. If budget is not your first concern and you want a knife that handles wet environments, holds an edge longer, and never asks you to compromise. S35VN. Benchmade Puaco. ESE3 S35VN version. Pay the premium and stop thinking about it. All 3 categories linked below. Hit like if this finally settled it. Subscribe. MagnaCut versus S35VN is next. Drop your steel in the comments.